A very cheerful and pleasant good morning to all. Excellencies including Honorable Dr. S.P. Singh Ji, President Gujranwala Khalsa Education Council and former Vice Chancellor Guru Nanak Dev University Amritsar, Sardar Arvinder Singh Ji, Honorary General Secretary Gujranwala Khalsa Education Council, Dr. Arvinder Singh, Principal Gujranwala Guru Nanak Khalsa College, Dr. Davinder Sharma, Professor and former Chairperson, Department of Commerce, Himachal Pradesh University, Shimla, Dr. Manu Mahajan, Assistant Professor, HOD and Coordinator Commerce and Management Department, St. Bede's College, Shimla, Mr. Saurabh Mahajan, Assistant Vice President, IDFC First Bank, Fagwada Branch, and participants joining on this online platform. Reserve Bank of India is the central bank of country. As the central bank of country, RBI is one of the architects of nation economy and its decision touch everyday lives of all Indians. From ensuring stability of interest rates and exchange rates to providing adequate liquidity for productive sectors and ensuring adequate supply of currency, RBI also monitors flow of credit to desired sectors and ensures orderly development of financial market and institutions. In order to discuss the role of RBI in economic developments, regulation and supervision of financial markets in the area of financial management, we have organized this webinar. Now I request Dr. Arvinder Singh, Principal, Gujranwala Guru Nanak Khalsa College, to formally welcome our esteemed resource person of today's webinar. Principal, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Jukara. Dear friends, good morning to all of you. For a long time now, various departments of Gujranwala Guru Nanak Khalsa College, Ludhiana, have been maintaining the glorious tradition of organizing national and international webinars, symposium, conferences, etc., on wide range of issues at frequent intervals. It's a great honor for me that in continuation of series of such academic activities, today our postgraduate Department of Commerce is organizing a national webinar on RBI and financial management. Well, on the behalf of Gujranwala Khalsa Education Council and Postgraduate Department of Commerce, I extend warm welcome to Dr. Davinder Sharma, Professor, Department of Commerce, Himachal Pradesh University, Shimla, Mr. Manu Mahajan, Assistant Professor, Department of Commerce, St. Bede's College, Shimla, Mr. Saurabh Mahajan, Assistant Vice President, IDFC First Bank. I'm sure that thought-provoking ideas to be presented by our experts in this webinar will definitely enhance the knowledge of all the delegates. I would also like to thank our managing committee, especially Dr. S.P. Singh Ji, our worthy president and former vice chancellor of Guru Nanak Dev University, Amritsar, for his active support and guidance and encouragement, which always proves to be very effective for all of us. I would also like to thank Sardar Arvinder Singh Ji, Honorary General Secretary, Gujranwala Khalsa Education Council, for his active support. I congratulate the Postgraduate Department of Commerce for taking initiative to conduct this webinar. Here, I wish to congratulate the profession. I wish to congratulate Madam Jitendra Kapoor, Head Postgraduate Department of Commerce, and Professor Jagkiran for organizing secretary of this webinar. I wholeheartedly appreciate their dedicated efforts. I would also like to thank our technical team for their technical support to conduct this webinar. Finally, welcome you all.
Thank you, sir, for your motivating words and earnest welcome address. Now I request Professor Jitinder Kaur, Head PG Department of Commerce, to introduce the theme of the webinar.
A very good morning to all. Respected Dr. S.P. Singh Ji, former Vice Chancellor, Guru Nanak Dev University, Amritsar, President Gujranwala Khalsa Education Council, Principal Dr. Arvinder Singh Ji, dear participants, my students, participants, my fellow colleagues. Today we have with us eminent speakers, Dr. Davinder Sharma, Professor, Department of Commerce, HP University, Shimla, Mr. Manu Mahajan, Assistant Professor, Department of Commerce and Management, St. Bede College, Shimla, Mr. Saurabh Mahajan, Assistant Vice President, IDFC First Bank. I welcome all of you in this one-day webinar on the topic of Reserve Bank of India and financial management. So today's topic is Reserve Bank of India and financial management. The Reserve Bank of India's central bank and regulatory body under the Ministry of Finance, Government of India, and it is responsible for the issue and supply of Indian rupee and the regulation of Indian banking system. It also manages the country's main payment system and work to promote its economic development. The Reserve Bank of India is the Central Bank of India, which was established on 1st April 1935 under the Reserve Bank of India Act. The Reserve Bank of India uses monetary policy to create financial stability in India, and it's charged with regulating the country's currency and its The main purpose of the RBI is to conduct consolidate supervision of financial sector in India, which is made up of commercial banks, financial institution, and non-banking finance firm. The main purpose of RBI is to conduct consolidate supervision of the financial sector in India, which is made up of commercial bank, financial institution, and non-banking financial firm. Initiates adopted by the RBI include restructuring bank inspection, introducing off-site survival of banks and financial institutions, and strengthening the role of auditors. So I hope this webinar will be very beneficial for all of us. And in this webinar, it is going to be discussed how Reserve Bank of India is managing its finances through monetary system and credit control techniques. So it will be very beneficial for our students and for our participants and for all of us. Once again, I welcome and thank you, all of you. Thank you very much. Over to Professor Jagkiran Kaur.
We are delighted to have such knowledgeable person amongst us. I request Dr. Devendra Sharma to enrich our participants with his words of wisdom. Dr. Devendra Sharma.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, one and all present in this national webinar on RBI and financial management. Respected President of GGS Khalsa College, Gujranwala Khalsa College, Education Society, Dr. S.P. Singh, Principal of the college, Arvinder Singh ji, Professor Jitendra Kaur, Professor Jagkiran Kaur, and all worthy members present in this August occasion in the national webinar on RBI and financial management. At the very outset, I am grateful to the organizers for providing me this opportunity to say a few words on finance, particularly with reference to Reserve Bank of India. So for this, I am thankful to the entire team of organizers to be here and to address the scholars, academics, and students. Khalsa College, other across India. Friends, as I was to tell about financial management of RBI, my focus point will be to ponder upon financial management of RBI and including MIBOR, M-I-B-O-R. So I would like to start with the ethics and values. All of these know, perhaps you agree with me, that ethics and values have very important place in development of the society, the families, individuals, and of course the nation and the world. When we talk about ethics and values, can we mean discipline and orderliness? So ethics means we must have certain sort of code of behavior, and if there is presence of ethics, there will be orderliness, there will be discipline. So when we talk about any institution, any society, college, university, or nation, definitely discipline is required. We generally say that Indian are ethics strong. Fine. We are strong. But we cannot deny that ethics is required by every organization, every nation. We cannot say that a nation, maybe the pattern of ethics is different, being implied by every nation. In India, the pattern of ethics is different than of the other nations. What is the impact? Why I am talking about ethics and values? Actually, it is to regulate the things. It ensures discipline. It ensures orderliness. So what I want to say is that the organizations which are equipped with the ethics, definitely they would be having orderliness. And it is mandatory when we talk about any family, if we are having elderly people and they are ensuring a discipline, a culture, and ethics in that family, definitely that family would be known. Fine. So now I am talking about Indian Constitution. What is the purpose of Indian Constitution? Constitution is also meant for orderliness. Orderliness. So every regulation, every format of code of ethics, every government is followed by the Constitution. Now, when we talk about Reserve Bank of India, for families, society, institutions, organization. So definitely it is following certain ethics, certain regulations, certain codes of ethics. So what is the purpose of RBI that we need to understand, and what code of ethics, what sort of governance is being followed by RBI? That is the point of discussion of today's webinar. So here I would like to say that financial management is one concept and RBI is the organization with reference to which we are discussing the concept of financial management. So what is the financial management? Actually, that concept under which we try that what are the efficient sources of finance and where those sources are thrown used efficiently. Efficient sources and efficient uses of the financial sources. That is actually the concept of financial management. Now, with regard to Reserve Bank of India, as Madam said, that RBI was established in the year 1935, way back before independence of the country, India, on April 1st, 1935. And since nationalization of RBI, that is in the year 1949, it is the apex body as a regulator, as a controller, as a supervisor, and as a governing body the concept which I was trying to discuss with regard to ethics and values. So it is that body which is directing, which is governing the mechanism of finance across the country in India. It is the apex body of the financial system being controlled in the India. So here, when we talk about financial system, I'll be interested to focus upon certain points which one must know about the financial system. Friends, RBI, as I have already said, is the apex body. RBI is the head of all the organizations which we are discussing today. And it is followed by, there are two types of organizations we can say as banking institutions, which we can categorize as scheduled and non-scheduled categories. So scheduled means those which are directly adhering to the regulation which are framed, and non-scheduled are which can have certain sort of alterations, or there are certain concessions being applied to the non-scheduled organizations. So scheduled banks or organizations include the commercial and the cooperative banks. And in the category of commercial banks, we are having different banks like public banks, private banks, foreign banks, regional rural banks. And in the category of cooperative banks, we are having state banks, district banks, and other banks. So this is the basic idea about the structure which we need to understand when we discuss the concept of financial system under RBI. So what I wanted to say is that RBI uses monetary policy to create financial stability and is regulating the country's currency and credit system, as it has already been discussed by Madam while giving the introduction of the RBI. So it is to conduct consolidated supervision of the financial sector in India, which is made of commercial banks, financial institutions, and non-banking financial firms. I have already discussed with regard to the organization structure, which is under the Reserve Bank of India. One important point is that on July 6, 2005, a new department named Financial Market Department was constituted for surveillance on financial markets. That is the new task done by the RBI in the year 2005 on July 6. That new department, this department is Financial Market Department, was constituted. And this department is to separate the activities of debt management and the monetary operations. And it is also to develop and monitor the instruments of the money market, and also to monitor the government securities and foreign money markets. This is the basic idea of having this department. So if you are able to see the slides I'm sharing on my computer, now I am discussing role of Reserve Bank of India. The RBI acts as a regulator and as a supervisor of the overall financial system. It manages all foreign exchanges under the Foreign Exchange Management Act of 1999. It injects public confidence into the national financial system. It protects interest rates and provides alternative banking operations to the public. It acts as an issuer of national currency, which is either issued or destroyed depending on its analysis criteria and conditions for current circulation. Now, friends, the functions of RBI, basically, it performs 5 types of functions. We generally say that it is a banker to the government, it is a controller to the credit, it is custodian of the foreign reserves, it issues notes, and it is a banker of the banks. So issue of notes means the Reserve Bank provides or prints the currency notes in the country except 1 rupee note. So this is the task, one of the tasks being performed by Reserve Bank of India. It is banker to the government. Why it is a banker to the government? That the reason is that it acts as the banker, agent, and advisor to the government of India and states on matters relating to economic and monetary policy. And it also manages public debt of the government. It is a banker's bank because RBI lends money to all the commercial banks of the country. I'll also discuss this concept in details. It is a custodian of the foreign reserves. I think another resource person is today will discuss on this concept also. For the purpose of keeping the foreign exchange rates stable, the Reserve Bank buys and sells foreign currencies and also protect the country's foreign exchanges funds. It sells the foreign currency in the foreign exchange market when its supply decreases in the economy and vice versa, and protects the country's foreign exchange funds. It is control of the credit. RBI uses both qualitative as well as quantitative techniques to control and regulate the credit flow in the country. When it feels that there is sufficient supply of money in the market, causing inflationary situation, it squeezes the flow of money. Now, related terms I am going to discuss. As I told you that I'll discuss the concept of banker's bank. These friends, these are the terms which we must understand. Expansion, one term is expansion. It is that term which is, say, related with the recession situation. If there is a recession in the market, I think you will agree with me that when a person deposits money in the bank, the motive is to get interest. Everybody, the purpose of investment is to get return. So here this concept of expansion is that if there is huge amount, in order to discourage people to invest money in the bank, what the RBI does, particularly in the situation when there is recession, it discourages, I'm repeating, it discourages investors to invest money in the bank. So what does it do? It decreases the interest rates. So once the interest rate is decreased, definitely people would not invest money in the bank. They will not deposit money in the bank. And the outcome or the result would be that the money would, instead of deposited in the bank, would be used by people in the market. And that would lead to that overcome or to recover the situation of the recession. So expansion is that technique applied by Reserve Bank of India, under which rate of interest is reduced so that people are discouraged to invest their money in the bank, and ultimately that money would be floated in the market, and that would lead to recover the situation of recession. Right? Second is contraction. It is opposite to the expansion. So in this case, people would be encouraged to invest their money in the bank. So they would be given such opportunities that they invest the money, they deposit the money in the bank. How that would be done? The interest rate would be increased. Once the interest rate is increased, people would definitely go to the bank and they would deposit their money. So this way, the money would not float in the market, but that would be deposited in the bank. These are the two important terms. These are the two important concepts which are applied by the Reserve Bank of India: expansion as well as contraction. Now, friends, there are other terms like cash reserve ratio. Earlier, those points which we had discussed, these were simple introduction. You can see the books and YouTube or other sources where from you can see these functions or the roles which the Reserve Bank of India does. But these are the practical concepts which you need to understand. So cash reserve ratio. Cash reserve ratio is, now there are three parties. One is Reserve Bank of India, another one is bank, and the third one is the persons or individual. Now let us try to correlate these three different parts. One is Reserve Bank of India, other one is commercial bank, and the third is the person. We are trying to correlate them. Suppose there is a person who is interested to deposit money in the bank. Suppose this amount is say rupees 1,000. The person is interested to deposit 1,000 in the bank. So what the person would do? Person would open the account in the bank and deposit the money. So there is a condition. Condition is laid down by the Reserve Bank of India. That whole amount of that person should not be retained by the concerned bank. Rather, Reserve Bank of India would lay down certain percentage that out of this amount, you will have to deposit certain stipulated rate of amount with the Reserve Bank of India. Say, suppose this rate is 5%. So it means that the person is interested to deposit 1,000 in the bank. But instead of 1,000, suppose that rate is 5%, only 950 rupees would be retained by the bank, and rest 50 would be deposited or given to the Reserve Bank of India. So this rate, this 5% or 50 rupees, that rate is termed as cash reserve ratio. So the relationship is that the individual who is interested to deposit money, who is interested to open an account in the bank, that amount would not be completely there, but some sort of amount would be the Reserve Bank of India. That rate is cash reserve ratio. Now, this amount 950, which is retained by the banker, there is a condition that out of this amount, some percentage should be in the form of liquidity, say like gold or government bond. So suppose this rate is 10 or 20%. So out of that 950 rupees, the rate which has been stipulated by the Reserve Bank of India as in the form of liquidity, that needs to be complied by the concerned bank in the form of liquidity like gold, government bonds, or any liquidity. And the rest amount will be retained by the bank itself. So that rate is termed as statutory liquidity ratio. This is termed as statutory liquidity ratio. Now, once the person is interested to have money, loan from the bank, so, and the commercial bank is not having sufficient amount of money in order to provide money to the individual. So definitely the bank will have to take loan, and there is a facility or the condition with the Reserve Bank of India to provide loan to the bankers. So there are two patterns, two rates of loans provided by the Reserve Bank of India to the bankers. So these two rates are termed as, one is repo rate and the other one is bank rate. So this is a rate. This is a rate under which loan is or funds are provided by the Reserve Bank of India to the commercial banks. Only the difference is that if the loan is given for a short time period, it is termed as repo rate, and if it is for a long time period, it is a bank rate. So basic difference is that both are loans given by the Reserve Bank of India. That rate is stipulated, and this on that rate, the loan is provided to the commercial banks. If it is for a short time period, then that rate would be termed as repo rate, and if it is for a long time period, it is a bank rate. Now, apart from these rates, when a banker is given loan to the parties, there is a basic rate which is determined by the commercial banks without any intervention of the Reserve Bank of India. So that rate is termed as base rate. That is termed as base rate. Then another one is reverse repo rate, when the commercial bank is having excess amount of funds. Excess amount of funds. In that case, in order to deposit or repay that amount by the commercial bank to the Reserve Bank of India, that rate is decided by the yeah, that this is the interest I am going to to get these points expansion. Repo rate banks of RBI, which are like selective credit control. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So, qualitative tools. I was discussing the expansion, contraction, CRR, SLR, bank rate, repo rate, reserve repo rate, and base rate. Now, there are certain qualitative tools of RBI like selective credit control. Under this measure, the RBI can specifically instruct banks not to give loans to the traders of certain commodities, for example, sugar, edible oils, etc. This is just to avoid any kind of speculation or hoarding of the commodities. Another one is moral suasion. Moral suasion means that certain banks they are persuaded through meetings not to be indulged in the different activities of economic trends. For example, when the RBI reduces repo rate, it asks banks to reduce the base rate as well. Then loan to value. Loan to value is the concept that how much should be the loan to be given out of value. The loan, the total amount of the person concerned, how much percentage of that should be given in the form of loan, that is loan to value. So these are the certain qualitative techniques applied by the Reserve Bank of India, RBI. Now, one concept which I was interested to discuss here in this webinar is MIBOR. MIBOR actually is Mumbai Interbank Offer Rate, MIBOR. Since all of you know that RBI is located in Mumbai, it serves as financial market in different ways, including overnight interbank lending rate, that is the MIBOR, Mumbai Interbank Offer Rate, which is the rate of interest charged by bank on a short-term loan to another bank. Once a bank is giving loan to the other bank, definitely there will be some interest. There will be some rate of interest be charged by that bank. So how much that rate should be, that is determined by the Reserve Bank of India. And this rate is termed as MIBOR, Mumbai Interbank Offer Rate. So MIBOR serves as a benchmark for interest rate minus related financial instruments in India. MIBOR is used in conjunction with the Mumbai interbank bid rate and forward rates to set short-term monetary policy. One is the rate which is obtained, and one is the rate which is decided to be paid. So this is a balance between these two types of rates. It is calculated based on input form of a panel of 30 banks and primary dealers. It was first established in 1998 and modeled after the more famous London Internet Bank overnight rate LIBOR. On that pattern, this MIBOR was introduced. So there is some calculation criteria of MIBOR. It is calculated every day by the National Stock Exchange of India as a weighted average of lending rates of a group of major banks throughout India on funds lent to first class borrowers. This is the interest rate at which banks can borrow funds from other banks in the Indian interbank market. So the Mumbai interbank bid rate is the interest rate that one participating bank would pay another to attract the deposit of funds. The MIBID, it is slightly different. MIBID is different rate, which will be lower than the interest rate offered by those wanting to borrow funds, known as Mumbai Interbank Offered Rate MIBOR, which is the rate of interest charged by a bank on a short-term loan to another bank. This is to provide the bank a profit from the spread of interest earned and paid. The MIBID is usually lower than the MIBOR. As India's financial markets have continued to develop, India felt it needed a reference rate for its debt market, which led to the development and introduction of the MIBOR. It is used in conjunction with the Mumbai Interbank bid and forward rates, that is MIBID and MIBOR, by the Central Bank of India to set short-term monetary policy. So there were certain technical problems. I was interested to switch on my camera, but there is a technical hitch or glitch due to which it could not be made possible. And since there is a paucity of time, I have taken. So this was the thing I was interested to discuss. I'm once again thankful to the organizers for providing me this platform to share my views with the scholars and teachers. Thank you very much. If anything is to discuss, please.
Thank you, sir, for addressing the audience on this platform and enlightening our audience with your thought-provoking ideas on financial management of RBI, including credit control methods, instruments of money market, and custodian of foreign reserves. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of this webinar. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Our next resource person is Mr. Manu Mahajan, HOD and Coordinator, Commerce and Management Department, St. Bede's College, Shimla, and Coordinator of World Humanitarian Drive, an NGO based in UK. He has teaching experience of more than 15 years. He has co-authored books on entrepreneurship development, retail management, and management control techniques. He has invited in many national and international conferences and presented many research papers. I request Mr. Manu Mahajan to kindly address the participants. Sir, please.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, sir.
So today my topic will be foreign exchange management. I'll be discussing the various terms and some factors affecting foreign exchange management. Now, foreign exchange market. The foreign exchange market is a decentralized worldwide market. As you all know that the participant in the foreign exchange market includes central bank, commercial bank, brokers, etc. And the central bank, which is RBI in India, monitors market movements and sentiments and intervene according to government policy. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The function of buying and selling of foreign currencies in India is performed by authorized dealers, money exchanges appointed by the RBI. The foreign exchange department of the major bank are linked across the world on a 24-hour basis. Major commercial centers are London, Amsterdam, Milan, Paris, New Tokyo, Hong Kong, and Singapore. Forex management may be defined as the science of management of generation, use, and storage of foreign currencies in the process of exchange of one currency into another called foreign exchange. When we say that exchange rate of Indian rupees 52.40 per US dollar, we mean that 52.40 Indian rupees are required to purchase one US dollar. When the exchange rate becomes 52.90, we say that value of Indian rupee has depreciated against the US dollar. Currency of one country is used for transaction with foreigners. Each country in the world has its own, as you know that each currency in the world has its own currency. Now, for all the imports from a foreign country, a host country should pay the currency of the former, and for all exports, the host country should be paid in its own currency. Like, for example, you want to buy some US products, we should pay in dollars. And if US wants to buy our Indian products, they should pay in Indian currency. But practically, this won't be possible because we have to maintain lots of data is required for the exchange rate, and some associated payment problems can arise. And so for that, what the all the countries have decided, they are going to transact in one common currency. And nowadays, the common currency is US dollar. So therefore, most of the countries choose a common currency known as US dollar. The US dollar has emerged as the strongest international currency for the past 60 years and is used as the payment all over the world in the international trade. Next is nature of forex management. It is a part of management science. Now, what is management? Art of doing things with others is called a management. And forex is a part of management because the planning part includes the budgeting for forex, organization, which refers to how we should utilize the forex reserves, and control part focuses on creation of forex reserves. Next is generation of forex. Now, when a country exports a goods, it earns foreign exchange. Foreign exchange can be used simultaneously or complementary with the term known as forex. You can use either term foreign exchange or you can use term. When a country exports goods or services, it earns forex is consumed. Ma'am, actually, slides are not sharing up. So either way, the forex needs to be generated. Either you are going to create the funds, or next it pertains to use of forex. Now the tools of cash management comes handy in using forex. The process of forex involves identification of suppliers of goods and services. Then we have to do the negotiations with our foreign partners. So all this comes under use of forex management. It also covers storage of forex. Now we have to store foreign exchange in the form of special drawing rights, in the form of gold. It's a part of storage of forex. And next we have scope of forex management. Under scope, we'll see how we'll use the forex management. Like for an Indian example, an Indian citizen travels abroad on a business visit and he purchased foreign currency from an authorized dealer. That is the scope of foreign management. Similarly, an Indian student who wants to go to a British scientific magazine, he subscribes one magazine from a then they have to Indian industrialist who wants to import raw material from Malaysia, suppose. He is going to get a letter of credit arrangement provided by his bank. He'll also pay in foreign exchange. Now, how this trading is going to occur? How this foreign exchange is going to occur? Because whenever we do our trade, two aspects are involved, either the purchase or a sale. Our trader has to purchase goods from his supplier, which he sells to his customers. Similarly, the bank, which is authorized to deal in foreign exchange, purchase as well as sell its commodity, that is called the foreign currency. We have to go to the bank for the purchasing and selling of foreign currency. We cannot do of its our own. Now, 2 points one must keep in mind while talking of a foreign exchange transaction. First is the transaction is always talked of from the bank point of view. And second, item refer to the foreign currency. Therefore, we can say a purchase means the bank has purchased or it has purchased the foreign currency. Similarly, when we say about a sale, we say bank has sold the foreign currency or it has sold the foreign currency. In a purchase transaction, the bank acquires foreign currency and parts with home currency. In a sale transaction, the bank parts with foreign currency and acquires some home currency. Now you see the organization, what comes in the organization of foreign exchange management. I'll use my blackboard. First, we have FEMA Act, Foreign Exchange Management Act. Under this, we have various parties involved here. First is the RBI. RBI is there, which is authorized by central government. Central government has given the power to RBI to do the dealings in foreign exchange. RBI is going to authorize various persons. We are going to authorize various persons. And these persons are known as authorized money changers. And second, they are also called as authorized dealers. Now, what is the difference between these two terms? First is authorized money changers. Basically, they are going to buy and sell the foreign currency. Authorized dealers will deal only in buying of securities. They won't be able to sell the securities. Securities here means the foreign currency. And the third one is Foreign Exchange Dealers Association of India. That is called Foreign Exchange Dealers Association of India, FEDAI. Their work is to frame the rules for the conduct of foreign exchange business in India and to coordinate with RBI and also to circulate information which is essential for the customers or the members. Now, why one should participate in the foreign exchange management? First, exporting and importing companies. Like we are all have dealing with the multinational companies. We are getting the goods, we are buying the goods from multinational companies, selling the goods to multinational companies. And for that, we require foreign exchange. Foreign investment flow. Like when the goods are coming into India, we also require some foreign exchange. Like for example, a Canadian company wants to open a factory in USA. In order to cover the cost of the land, labor, and the capital, they need some US dollars. And suppose the company holds most of the reserves in Canadian dollars, they have to convert Canadian dollars into US dollars. Because 60% of the world trade is done in US dollars, not in any other currency. Next is bank. Now, earlier we used the term interbank. Whenever we used to have foreign exchange market, we use the term intermarket. This term was employed to capture the nature of foreign exchange market when predominantly it deals with the banks only. Bank includes central bank, investment and commercial banks. Speculators. Now, many financial institutions use this currency exchange as a method to generate income. There are also many individuals who try to do the same thing. The currency market moves in one direction only when many investors act together. So speculators are the one, they are going to see if the foreign exchange rate is increasing in the market, they'll sell it in the market. But if the rate is declining, they will purchase the foreign exchange. It is the work of foreign exchange regulator. Next, functions of a foreign exchange market. What are the functions of foreign exchange market? First one, it enables the investors to hedge or minimize their risk by seeing the increase in the price of the foreign exchange reserve. Like for example, US dollar, it's increasing as compared to Indian rupee. So they want to minimize their risk. It also enables the trader to arbitrage any inequalities. It also provides an investment or trading avenues to entities who are willing to expose themselves to this risk. Now, when we talk about Indian context, so any currency other than Indian rupees is called foreign currency. Foreign exchange includes currency, drafts, bills, letters of credit, traveler checks, which are ultimately payable in foreign currency. The next one, Next topic is determinants of exchange rate. How we are going to determine the exchange rate? The first is inflation theorem, or called purchasing power parity. It is a difference in inflation rates between two countries. If the domestic inflation is high, it means domestic goods are costlier than the foreign goods. This results in higher imports, creating more demand for foreign currency, which make it very costlier. Like for example, we can say PPP, that is purchasing power parity, or inflation theorems will be, if a basket of goods costs rupees 470 in India and rupees 10 in US dollars, then what we say that exchange rate is 470 per $1. Like for, I'll use the book to see it. Like 470 Indian rupee is used for $10. So $1 will cost rupee 47. 470 divided by 10, this comes to 47. So this is called purchasing power parity. Any doubts up to this much point? Currency, point of foreign currency will give you direct quote. Next is indirect quote. Like for direct quote means like for $1 cost rupees 49.50 is a dollar direct quote of an Indian rupee in India. An indirect quote, like for example, rupee 100 will cost 0.2 to 4.5. That is called PIP. PIP is called nearest to the decimal value. That is called PIP. Now, some basic terminology regarding foreign exchange management. First is PIP. A change in price of 1 point in Forex is referred to as a PIP. Like for example, when we talk about US dollar, the US dollar is costing is 120.94. The 0.94, जहाँ से point start होता, that will be called a PIP. Going long or short, a long position is a situation in which one purchases a currency pair at a certain price. Currency pair means like we always if we want to trade with Japan in Asia, we follow the Japanese yen. हम एशिया में जापानीज येन से कंपेयर करते हैं when we want to do trade with Asian countries, and we want to do, if we want to trade with foreign countries like European countries, we always trade in US dollars. So long position is so yen in long position is a state situation price and hopes to sell it at a later price. Like for example, अब मुझे लग रहा है कि yen is quite cheaper. So what I'll do, I'll buy slow and sell it when the rate is going to become higher. I'll set at a later date. But agar if a trader thinks a currency pair will fall, he'll sell it and hope to buy it back at a lower price. That is called a short going. Spot exchange rate. Like for example, if I'm going to buy some goods from Canada, I have to pay right now in terms of Canadian dollars. So if I have the currency, I have to pay immediately in US dollars. So that will be called the spot rate. Forward exchange rate. Like forward exchange rate means whenever I'm going to do some transaction with a foreign country, I want the payment to be made in Indian rupees only, but they don't have Indian rupees. So what I'll do, I'll make an agreement or the negotiation with the Canadian company to pay me later on. So that is called a forward exchange rate. Whenever they have Indian rupees, they can convert that and transfer into my account. That is called forward exchange rate. And the last one is forward premium or discount rate. This is calculated as a premium rate. So forward premium के लिए formula होता है forward rate minus spot rate divided by spot rate into 12 divided by number into 100. And is number of months till the bill is going to be mature. I hope everything is clear to you. Any doubts or the questions? Sorry, my laptop is not working. I was about to share the PPTs with everybody, but My laptop has some network issue, so I'm sharing with the mobile only. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for
Thank you, sir, for your wonderful lecture on financial exchange, transactions, foreign currency, and other financial assets in simple and impressive way. Thank you, sir, for being part of this webinar and giving your valuable information. Now, last resource person for the day is Mr. Saurabh Mahajan, Assistant Vice President at IDFC First Bank. He is an experienced branch manager and well qualified in portfolio management, business relation management, banking, business development, and retail assets. He has done his MBA in marketing and finance from APJ Institute of Management. He has more than 13 years of experience providing service in banking sector. We feel honored to have such esteemed personality amongst us. I request Mr. Saurabh Mahajan to deliver his topic of discourse. Sir, please.
Thanks, madam, for providing me opportunity on this great platform to present a topic of financial management. I'm really thank you. You have provided me this opportunity. In financial management, I'm starting the topic. Can I?
Yes, sir.
And I would like to, first of all, thanks to this organization and this platform for giving me this opportunity once again. And I'm starting my topic with the term financial management, and I have a presentation. Okay, so there are various types of financial management. One financial management is being done by the government of India. One is our personal financial management, right? We finances when we are so busy in our day-to-day routine. So I would like to start the topic. Can I share my presentation? Ma'am, can you help me in
Yes,
sharing the
sir.
presentation?
You can, sir.
Thank you. So we'll start with the topic financial management, and first slide would be organize your finances. What does we mean with organize your finances? It means कि हम अपने finances को कैसे manage करेंगे. Organize your finances is the first step to creating wealth. What are the biggest obstacles in managing finances? Credit cards, personal loans, mortgages, car loans, personal loans. So when and of course, if you are managing your retirement account also. Once you start to organize your finances, you will see a different, definitely a change in your budgeting experience. So how to do it? Could you change the next slide? Here. So organize your finances. The next slide would be spend less than you earn. Spend less than what you earn. So how do we do it? Spend less than you earn. You start with your budgeting. Yes, you can take small steps to track your personal expenses. Budget your expenses to achieve long-term goals. If you learn to track your finances, know where you spend the most, you will be able to control your money. The best way to ensure that either overcome your debt or avoid it in the first place, or to never spend on the things which you never wanted. Next would be put your money to work. Yeah, thank you. Many of us must be, young entrepreneurs, young, just who have started their working, just started their jobs. Don't forget to invest. There are various investment tools. There is PPF, there is mutual fund SIP, there is fixed deposit, there are bonds, there are RBI bonds, there are n number of instruments. Just want to quote an example. If a 21-year-old who just started his job or started his venture, if he just saves 17 rupees a day until, say, for example, he or she retires at the age of 65, and return is only 5 to 6% per annum. Of course, it is compounded return. You can be a millionaire. But if you start that investing late, say for example at the age of 31, 10 years later, then daily money investment should not be, it will not be 17 rupees. It is 4 times of what you are saving as of now. So start early. Einstein used to say compounding is the eighth wonder of the world. So that is the advantage of compounding. If you start early, you have more time to invest. 9 years makes in your retirement corpse. So save early and often in small amounts. If somebody say, हमारे पास तो सेविंग्स के लिए पैसा बचता नहीं है, हमारे resources नहीं है extra income generate करने. If you are able to even save, 100 rupees, 500 rupees per month in 30 years, it will give you an extraordinary amount. So start saving early. Have enough time for yourself to let the wonder of compounding work on your money. So later on your stages, your money work for you. You don't work for money. The next would be educate yourself. Educate yourself. You have been educated. There is a flaw in our, I would like to start. There is a flaw in our schools or even curriculums. We are never being taught on money. Yes, history, geography, chemistry, physics, but in our schools, we are not being educated on financial management. So start educating yourself now, since you are, more or less into jobs or might be having or you are entrepreneurs. Start educating yourself how to do it. Read every financial newspaper, be it on Sunday, when you have time. Read it, go through it. Read books from well-regarded financial authors. I'm not here to promote any author, but start your reading a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad from Robert Kiyosaki. It is a very, very good book for building your knowledge. Very easy to understand. Understand why you're investing so that you will stick to your plan. Periodically gather research so you do not miss excellent investment opportunities. Investment opportunities doesn't come in equity only. There are debt, there are fixed deposits, there are PPF, as said by me earlier. Please read books, educate yourself, watch a financial news channel for half an hour at weekend at least, so you can educate yourself regarding your personal finances and various investment opportunity available in the market. Next slide. Limit your debt to income producing assets. There is a kahavat in Hindi, Aamdi Athani Kharcha Rupaiya. Don't do it. Don't do it. As in millennium, have risen. We are spending more on more, with credit cards there, on car loans. Say, for example, I need to buy a car. I don't have that money to buy that car. What we do? We go to a bank, buy car loan. No, I'm not saying car loan is you shouldn't be doing, but is it exceeding your income? With credit card and car loan, every rupee you spend to repay that is money flushed down the drain. All, but a few model of car depreciate to zero. आपने car लिया with the passage of time, that depreciation 5 years time. That requires more in repairs, finance charge that is reasonably unexpected return to owner. If you have to in debt, stick to financing items that retain value over time. For example, house, education. What I mean to say, even if you have to take a debt on things which appreciate over a period of time. If you buy a house today, say it's worth 50 lakhs, with the passage of time, it will grow in value. Invest in your education. It will give investment generating opportunity. Next slide, please. Understand risk. The key to understanding return on investment is that more you risk, the better return it should be. This is called risk return trade-off. Investments like stock and bonds that have a higher rate of return often have a higher risk of losing the principal that you invested. Investments like FD, money markets, which is a lower rate of return, have a lower risk of losing principal. Since no one knows the future, you cannot be 100% sure any investment will do good or bad. So, if you diversify your investment, one can go soar without severe impact to overall portfolio. What does I mean to say? Here is, there are n number of opportunities. I have discussed it earlier also, PPF, fixed deposit, equity, the direct equity, mutual funds, fixed deposit, gold, real estate. So you should be investing in a manner that your investment is not in one basket. It is diversified into all those investment avenues. कभी एक इन्वेस्टमेंट अपॉर्चुनिटी अच्छा करेगी, कभी दूसरी करेगी, कभी तीसरी करेगी, so that your overall portfolio return is not got hidden. Next slide, please. And taxation. This is the most important part. हम इन्वेस्टमेंट कर लेते हैं. Say for example, I invested in an instrument. Say for example, in current scenario, I invested in a fixed deposit. Fixed deposit, which is giving me a return of, say for example, it is just hypothetical example. Say for example, it is yielding me 10% of return, and that person falls into a taxation slab of 30%. So what is the net return is? It is 7%. And there is another investment opportunity available, hypothetically, which is yielding 8%. But it is tax-free. So ultimately, what I am getting on a 10% kind of return after tax, I am getting only 7%. But there was another investment opportunity which was giving me only 8%, but that return was tax-free. 1% more as opposed to a 10% kind of return. So we know any money which is going to be taxed should yield us lesser of a return. So that is very important when you consider taxation part of that also. Next, please. Plan for unexpected. Despite of our best efforts, we'll face unforeseen emergencies. Save enough money, stock up on your insurance to be able to weather extended unemployment, accidents, medical care, large car, house repairs, natural disasters. So for that, increase the amount of money you save when times are good. So that money can hedging against the bumps in the road, making sure unexpected financial exposures doesn't derail your long-term goals and family financial security, which is very, very, very important, guys. That's it for my side. Thank you. Well, I will welcome any question from the platform. More than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir, for your wonderful lecture on financial management. Mr. Mahajan very well touched the various aspects of financial management like risk management, capital structure, capital budgeting, and self-development regarding finance. Thank you very much, sir. You have come for
Thank you.
this webinar. Thank you very much. Now,
Thank you.
I request Dr. Deepak Walia, Associate Professor of PG Department of Commerce, to propose vote of thanks. Ma'am, please.
Thank you, Jakiran. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I, Deepak Walia, feel honored to thank all the esteemed guests of today's webinar. I must say that PG Department of Commerce feel humbled and honored by the kind gesture of all the guests to consenting our invitation. I am really grateful to Dr. Devinder Sharma from HP University, Shimla, Mr. Manu Mahajan from St. Bed's College, Shimla, and Mr. Saurabh Mahajan from IDFC First Bank for their respective knowledge enriching and exhilarating insight of the subject. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to all of you for dwelling upon the intricacies of the topic and thought-provoking observations. I'm also thankful to the management and principal of the college for their ever-encouraging words and inspiring us to organize such elite events. I do feel indebted to the faculty for their perpetual endeavors in this direction and leaving no stone unturned to advance academic pursuits. Last but not the least, I owe my gratitude to the participants for being connected to us. Once again, thank you very much, everyone, for joining this webinar.
Thank you, ma'am, so much. Now, thanks everyone for joining us on this webinar at this platform. Hope to meet you again in forthcoming webinar. Thank you so much, all of the participants.